Hi, I'm Shiley. I'm a felter and farmer from Michigan, and I help crafters like you learn more about felting. So today we're going to learn about wet felting. This is a video designed specifically for my felting kits that do wet felting and needle felting together. So we're going to be using the tools included in my wet felting supplies kits, so you know exactly what to use and how to wet felt. So let's get started.
First off, let's talk about the supplies. You'll need a large bath towel on top of your table, and then a large sheet of plastic. Remember, you can cut all your plastic to size. Then a bamboo rolling mat. These are in my wet felting kits, or you can purchase them separately online. Then another sheet of plastic on top of the bamboo mat. You have to have one underneath and on top of. The one on top you want to just fit the bamboo mat. I folded this one in half to fit to size. And then you have your piece of fabric mesh. This will lay on top of your wool once we lay it out. You also need a hand towel. I always grab an extra one too, just in case I need to soak up water. And soap. You'll have a bar soap, is my favorite to use. Hot soapy water. This is in a bottle I can squirt out of. And I have some in a pitcher as well, just in case I need more. The trick is hot water. Today I'm working with 3 different colors, but you can make all sorts of designs. I use wool roving. So wool roving is carded wool that's taken off a carding machine into strips. Generally, you want to use carded wool in bat form or in roving form for felting projects. So to lay out the project, we take small pieces of roving and lay them out in a pattern. So you're going to start in one direction. So we're going the fibers from left to right. And we'll alternate with different layers. So this is layer 1. So I'm taking thin strips of roving. You want to make sure it's an even layer for each. I'm going to do 3 different colors here and just overlapping these colors just slightly. So you can see I pull off a chunk of roving and then stretch it out a little bit. Generally, roving comes fairly thick, so you want to pull pieces off and stretch it out so you get like a 1/4 inch thickness. So I'm going to do 3 colors. Now when wet felting, the finished product generally is going to shrink from the original size between 20 and 40%. So if you want something to be a specific size, you want to make it larger in the beginning so it will be the correct size in the end. Now that we made 1 layer, we're going to alternate the direction of fibers. The direction of fibers is like the length of your roving. So it's like the chunks you're pulling off. So this time we're going to go up and down. And we're going to do the same thing as before, just the opposite direction, and lay out a thin layer of wool and alternate the colors. For a project like this, the bamboo mat is a certain size, so it's harder to make projects bigger than the bamboo mat. That's why it's great for smaller projects. You can also do the same thing with wet felting by doing it all by hand and almost massaging the wool. You can also get foam rollers, like cut a pool noodle down, and those you can cut to the size you like. Those foam rollers, they generally take more felting, but the bamboo mat is fairly quick for wet felting purposes. So this is the 3rd and final layer I'll be doing on this specific project. I generally do between 3 and 4 layers. So if you are watching a video for a certain project, sometimes I'll do 3 layers, sometimes I'll do 4, just follow based on that project. But for this one, I'm doing 3. So we're going back to laying the fibers from left to right instead of up and down. The trick when you're laying out your wool is just to alternate the fiber directions. This creates a very strong bond between the wool fibers. If they all go the same direction, they don't felt as good. It's not as strong of a fabric, but when they alternate directions, it felt a lot better. Now you also can wet felt like a bat. Sometimes it takes more felting or you have to layer up more wool because the fibers aren't going different directions. They're generally going more in one direction. Now a tip to get a nice flat and even piece is to make sure your layers are even. I always press down on it and make sure like it feels everything is even in the same thickness. Now you can kind of scooch the sides in a little bit to tidy up those ends. But now we're going to actually wet it down. So you want to carefully lay your fabric mesh over top and then add some hot soapy water. You want to be very gentle at first, especially if you have any designs on your piece. You want to be gentle with it. So I start by squirting some water on. That's why I like the squirting bottles, is because you can direct it a little bit better at first. But you can also pour a little bit on. And less is more. You just want to add a little bit at a time and then work it in with your hands very gently. I just press straight down at first all over the project to distribute that water. I like to start in the middle and then work the way outwards. You want just enough so the wool fibers are saturated. And then pressing in the middle and moving your hands out to the sides will help distribute that water and push out any excess as well. When I first started wet felting, I used way too much water, but more water is better than less. So now I'm distributing some soap onto the piece. So I'm just taking that soap bar and running it back and forth across the piece. You do need soap for wet felting. And then you can just slowly start to almost massage that wool on top of the fabric mesh to distribute that soap and all that water evenly. No, I did speed this up a little bit, so I'm going slower. Now I'm going to peel that fabric mesh off of it so we can tidy up the edges even more. You want to do it before you really start felting so they felt into the project. Now I only fold over the very, very thinnest part of the edges. You don't have to. You can leave it just as is and then trim it off later as well. But you don't want to fold it so it's very thick. You still want it to be like as thick as the rest of the piece, but you can fold these very thin edges. Then we'll reapply the fabric mesh. You want everything nice and smooth. Make sure to smooth it out. And then we're going to roll up the bamboo mat, the plastic on top of the bamboo mat, the wool, and the fabric mesh. So you want to roll it as tight as you can. After rolling the bamboo mat up, you can set it aside and grab a hand towel. And then we're going to roll the mat up into this towel. This will help keep the bamboo mat tight together. And then we'll start rolling it. So you want to roll and put some pressure on the bamboo mat and the towel. And every so often I turn it a little bit and roll like on a different side. And you keep rolling for a little bit until your arms get a little tired or it feels like the roll is coming undone. This part is real time, so you can get a feel of how long I rolled it before I unrolled. So this part I rolled for almost a minute. Sometimes you have to do shorter times if it's starting to unroll as you're rolling. But you want to unroll the whole piece. Pull off the fabric mesh, and then we're going to flip it over. So with wet felting, you want to change the directions that your piece is laying while you're rolling. This will make sure the piece gets felted evenly. So you want to flip it over and like rotate it multiple times. So I'm going to speed the video up, but pretty much you just repeat this rolling process over and over again till your piece gets felted. Just make sure you keep the pattern of the bamboo mat, the plastic, the wool, fabric mesh, roll it up, and then roll all that up in your towel. And you should still have your big piece of plastic on the bottom. Now after rolling for quite a while, going to remove the mat and everything, and then do some what's called fulling, not felting, Fulling. So this is some of the process of shrinking down the wool. Some of it's achieved just with rolling, but you can also throw the wool against a table. Now, before you get to this process, you want to make sure the wool is like one piece of fabric. A way you can test to see if your wool is there is by doing the pinch test and actually pinching the wool and like trying to grab it to almost pull the fibers apart. And if you can actually pull fibers apart, you haven't rolled enough. But if you pinch it and it's one solid piece, then you can move on to fulling. So I'm going to do some throwing against a table. You want to put a little force behind it. Doesn't need to be soaking wet or the water will splash everywhere. And then we can grab the bamboo mat again, and just the bamboo mat. We're going to put the piece back into the mat and roll it up. and pretty much repeat the same process, but just with the bamboo mat this time. So I'm going to roll, roll, roll. I didn't even put it in the towel because it's easier to roll with just the mat and the wool. So again, you want to flip the piece, rotate it, do all different directions. So after all these processes, you want to make sure to fully rinse out your wool. Rinse out all that soap and any residues the wool might be holding on to. So I'm rinsing it in some warm water, and look at all that soap. So after you rinse it out, you want to lay flat to dry. Make sure it's fully dry before you do any more needle felting on it or cut it.
So that's how you wet felt small flat projects. You can use this technique to make backgrounds for needle felted pieces, or you can make small pieces of fabric to cut and sew together as well. You can find my wet felting supplies kit on my website, www.sheepishlymade.com. You can find the link in the description below. Thanks for watching, and make sure to like and subscribe to my channel. Have a great day and happy felting.